I never thought I would hear my own parents say the words that still echo in my head. It was late in the evening. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge and the low murmur of voices coming from the living room. I was walking down the hallway, on my way to get some water, when I froze. My mother's voice was soft, almost comforting, but the words cut me like glass. "Don't worry about the debt, David. We'll make Rachel pay. She's responsible enough. She'll figure it out." At first, I thought I had misheard. Maybe I was tired. Maybe my ears were playing tricks on me. But then my father's deeper voice followed, steady and certain. "Yes, she always picks up the pieces. She won't complain. She knows her duty." My heart stopped. They were talking about me, about my life, about my future. I pressed my back against the wall, every muscle in my body stiff, as though moving would give me away. The weight of their words crashed into me, one after the other. My parents, my own parents, were planning to put their son's mistakes on me. David's voice joined theirs, smooth and confident, the way he always sounded when he wanted something. "Good. I knew you'd understand. Rachel's used to struggling. She'll handle it better than I would. And honestly, I have more important things to take care of right now." He even laughed. A short, careless laugh. Like the whole situation was a joke. Like my life was a cushion for his comfort. I could feel my throat tighten as tears gathered in my eyes. I bit my lip so hard it almost bled. Every instinct screamed at me to burst in and confront them, but something stronger held me back. Fear. Fear of what they might say if they saw me. Fear that it was all true, that I was nothing more than their safety. I slid down to the floor quietly, my knees trembling. My parents' voices grew softer, blending into the background, but the damage was already done. My trust, the trust one had carried since childhood, cracked into pieces that I knew could never be put back together. They had chosen him. Again. Always him. David, the golden child. The one they protected no matter how careless he was. And me, the one who worked 2 jobs, the one who stayed behind to help, the one who never asked for much. I was the one they had decided to burden even more. I covered my mouth with my hand to stop a sob from escaping. The water I came for was forgotten. I stayed in that hallway, cold and broken, listening to the people I loved most in the world betray me with calm voices and easy promises. That night, a part of me died. The part that believed family always stood together. The part that believed love was stronger than favoritism. And deep inside, a new part of me started to grow, quiet, angry, and unwilling to be their sacrifice ever again. My name is Rachel, and if you ask people about me, they would probably say I am dependable. The one who shows up, the one who works hard, the one who doesn't complain. And they wouldn't be wrong. I have lived most of my life carrying responsibilities that were never really mine, but I carried them anyway, because that's what family was supposed to mean. I work at a small office downtown. The pay is not great, but it covers my rent and groceries, and on good months I can even save a little. After work, I usually pick up shifts at a local cafe, pouring coffee and wiping tables late into the night. My friends sometimes ask me why I push myself so much, but they don't understand. For me, rest is a luxury I can't afford. Every dollar counts. Every hour matters. David, my older brother, lives a completely different life. He drives a shiny black car that costs more than I make in a year. He posts pictures on social media from expensive restaurants, weekend getaways, and luxury hotels. He dresses in clothes I couldn't dream of buying, and he wears them with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you'll never have to worry about bills or debt collectors knocking at your door. The truth is, David doesn't really earn the life he shows off. He's had doors open for him since we were kids. When he failed a class in college, my parents paid for a private tutor. When he wanted to start a business, they co-signed his loan. And when that business collapsed, leaving a mountain of debt, they comforted him instead of holding him accountable. Meanwhile, I was the child who stayed quiet, who didn't ask for much. I remember in high school, I wanted to join a music program, but it was too expensive. My parents said, "Rachel, be practical. Focus on what's important." But when David wanted new sports equipment, they bought it without hesitation. Even as a child, I could see the difference. He was the star, I was the helper. That pattern never changed. After college, when my father's health began to decline, I was the one who drove him to appointments, who sat with him through long nights when he couldn't sleep. My mother would call me whenever she needed something, groceries, errands, repairs, because she knew I would drop everything to help. David was too busy, and somehow, that excuse was always enough. I don't mean to sound bitter. I love my family. I always believed that my efforts mattered, that they noticed the sacrifices I made. But the truth is, my sacrifices became invisible. They stopped seeing them. They expected them, like the sun rising in the morning. Sometimes, when I'm scrubbing dishes after a long shift, I catch myself wondering why I keep doing it. Why I keep pushing myself for people who never say thank you. The answer is simple, because I believed it was the right thing. I believed family came first. And maybe deep inside, I hoped that one day my parents would look at me the way they looked at David, with pride, with admiration, with love that wasn't tied to what I could provide. But that day never came. Instead, I became the invisible backbone of our family, the one who held everything together while David played the role of the golden child. When he failed, they called him ambitious. When I succeeded, they called it expected. What hurt most was knowing how much I had given up. I postponed my dreams of going back to school because tuition was too high. I turned down a better apartment because my parents needed me to lend them money. I watched opportunities slip through my fingers because there was always some family emergency, some new way I could step in. And still, no matter what I did, it was never enough. At family dinners, the conversation always circled back to David, his plans, his business ideas, his charm. My achievements were polite side notes, quickly brushed over. I used to smile through it, telling myself that my time would come, that hard work always gets noticed in the end. But after that night in the hallway, when I overheard their voices choosing him over me once again, I realized the truth. My parents would never see me the way I hoped. To them, I wasn't their daughter with dreams and limits. I was their solution, their safety net, their reliable backup plan. And David knew it too. That's what made his laugh that night cut so deep. He knew my role, and he was comfortable with it. He had grown up in the warm glow of their approval, while I lived in their shadow, carrying the weight of responsibilities they never trusted him with. I thought about all of this in the days after I overheard them. My life stretched before me like a road I hadn't chosen, paved with sacrifices that weren't mine to make. And for the first time, I wondered if I had the strength to step off that road. A few days after that night, my parents finally called me into the living room. The air felt heavy, like everyone already knew what was about to happen except me. My mother sat with her hands folded neatly on her lap. My father leaned back in his chair with that serious look he used whenever he wanted to seem firm, and David was sprawled comfortably on the couch, scrolling through his phone as if none of this mattered. "Rachel," my father began, his voice calm but distant, "we need to talk about something important. Your brother's business ran into trouble, and there's a large debt involved. It has to be taken care of, or the whole family's name will be ruined." I stared at him, my chest tightening. "Okay, but why are you telling me this?" David smirked without looking up from his phone. "Because you're the responsible one, little sister. Who else would they tell?" My mother shot him a look, but she didn't correct him. Instead, she turned to me with a soft sigh. "Rachel, you've always been dependable. You've always done what's right. We know you can handle this. If the creditors come after David, it will destroy his future. But if you take it on, you can manage. You're strong enough." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My voice cracked when I asked, "You want me to pay David's debt?" "It's not about want, it's about need," my father said firmly. "We raised you to put family first. David can't be dragged into this. You know how much he has on his plate." I glanced at David, who was now leaning back with a lazy grin, tapping his expensive watch like he was late for something glamorous. "Really?" I asked him. "You're sitting there wearing a watch that could pay my rent for 6 months, and you want me to take on your debt?" He shrugged, not even ashamed. "That's how it is, Rachel. I can't have this hanging over me. It'll ruin my reputation, my credit, my future deals. You don't understand how these things work. But you're good with money, with budgeting. You'll figure it out." My hands trembled in my lap. "How much is it?" My mother hesitated, glancing at my father before whispering, "Almost 40,000. The number hit me like a punch to the stomach. 40,000. I didn't even have 4,000 in my savings account. I worked 2 jobs just to survive, and they expected me to somehow cover that kind of debt? "I can't," I said, shaking my head. "That's impossible. I'll drown." "You won't," my father insisted. "You always find a way. Take out a loan, pick up extra hours. You're young, you have time to recover. If David takes this hit, his life will be ruined forever. Think about your brother. Think about my brother." Those words echoed in my head, the same words I had heard my entire life. When I wanted something and couldn't have it, I was told to think about David. When I had to sacrifice, it was always for him. And now, once again, my life was being thrown under the bus to protect his comfort. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I looked at David. "Do you even care what you're asking of me?" He met my gaze for a second and then smiled, slow and arrogant. "Of course I care, Rachel. I care about my future. And right now, my future depends on you stepping up. That's what family is for, right?" The room felt smaller, like the walls were pressing in on me. I wanted to scream, to tell them how unfair it was, how tired I was of being the one who carried everything. But my parents' faces were set. They weren't asking me, they were telling me. This was already decided. That night, lying in my small apartment, I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The weight of their demand pressed down on me like a stone. Either I sacrifice myself again, or I let the family name be ruined. It wasn't a choice. It was a trap. And for the first time, I realized just how little my parents saw me as a daughter. To them, I was a shield, a tool, a way to keep David's life shiny and untouched. But deep inside, a quiet voice whispered something new. What about me? After that night, everything in my life began to shift. My parents didn't bring the subject up like a request anymore. It became an expectation. Calls from my mother came almost every day. Rachel, have you spoken to the bank about a loan? Or Rachel, remember this is for the family's good. If I hesitated, she would sigh and remind me how much David's future depended on me. My father was more direct. Stop dragging your feet. This is serious. We can't afford to let David's name be destroyed. I tried to explain to them that I was already stretched thin, but they wouldn't listen. Instead, they began to guilt me in quiet ways. My mother's voice would soften, almost pleading. I thought you were stronger than this, Rachel. I thought you understood sacrifice. My father would shake his head, disappointed, as if I had failed some unspoken duty. Each word chipped away at me until I began to question myself. Maybe I really was supposed to do this. Maybe I was the selfish one for even resisting. To make it possible, I picked up more shifts at the cafe. My mornings started before sunrise at the office, and my nights ended past midnight wiping down tables. Some days I barely ate. I simply didn't have the time or energy. My body ached constantly, but worse than that was the feeling that my life no longer belonged to me. Friends started to notice the change. Sarah, one of my closest friends, asked me to go out for dinner one week. I told her I couldn't. Just one night, Rach. You deserve a break, she said. But I shook my head. Every dollar I didn't save felt like betrayal. Slowly, the invitations stopped coming. My phone was quieter. My circle grew smaller. David, on the other hand, carried on like nothing was wrong. One afternoon, I ran into him outside a fancy restaurant. He was laughing with friends, dressed in a new suit. When he spotted me, he smirked. Hey, little sister. Hope you're working hard. I know you'll handle things for me. You always do. His words stung like a slap. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't even grateful. He was amused, like my suffering was entertainment. The nights were the hardest. I would come home, too exhausted to even cook, and sit at my kitchen table staring at unpaid bills, trying to calculate how much longer I could survive, like rent, utilities, groceries, and now, debt payments that weren't even mine. My savings disappeared, then my emergency fund, and still it wasn't enough. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the cafe's glass door at closing time. Dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back carelessly, shoulders slumped. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Where had Rachel gone? The Rachel who once had dreams, who laughed easily, who thought life would one day be brighter. All I saw now was a shadow of myself, worn down by everyone else's needs. My parents didn't notice. When I came to visit, dragging myself through their doorway with tired eyes, my mother would smile warmly at David and ask about his projects. My father would pat his shoulder, telling him he was destined for great things. Then, almost as an afterthought, they'd glance at me. Rachel, are you making progress with the payments? That was all I was to them, a progress report. Not a daughter, not a person, just a tool to solve their problem. The resentment grew quietly inside me. Each time David flaunted his wealth, posting pictures of new shoes, a weekend trip, or a sparkling watch, it burned deeper. Here I was destroying myself to save him, and he didn't even slow down. Instead, he taunted me. Once, when I tried to confront him, telling him how hard this was on me, he leaned back in his chair, sipping a drink. Relax, Rachel. You've always been the responsible one. This is just what you do. Don't fight who you are. Those words stayed with me. Don't fight who you are. Was this who I was? Someone born to clean up everyone else's mess? Someone whose own life didn't matter as long as everyone else was comfortable? The thought was unbearable. And yet, every day I kept going, because I didn't see another way out. The manipulation had worked. My parents' guilt, their disappointment, David's arrogance. It all combined to make me believe I had no choice. I was cornered, trapped in a cage I hadn't built, with walls that kept closing in no matter how hard I pushed. But deep inside, a flicker remained. A quiet voice, one I tried to silence but couldn't completely ignore, whispered to me in the silence of my small apartment. This isn't right. This isn't fair. And it cannot go on forever. It happened on a rainy Saturday afternoon. I had gone to my parents' house to drop off some groceries, even though I could barely afford them myself. David wasn't supposed to be there, but his car was parked out front, gleaming as always. I walked inside quietly, the sound of voices drawing me toward the study. I don't know what made me stop before entering. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was that same chill I had felt the night I overheard them before. Their voices carried through the half-closed door. David was speaking, his tone sharp. You should have told her from the start. She still thinks this is just some accident, some unlucky deal. If she finds out I pulled the loan in my name and blew it, she'll lose her mind. My heart dropped. I pressed my hand to my mouth, hardly able to breathe. My mother's voice came next, low and scolding. And what good would that do? Rachel has always been the responsible one. If she knew you were to blame, she would never agree to help. Sometimes a lie is kinder than the truth. A lie. They had lied to me. My father added, firm and steady. What matters is that the debt is being handled. Rachel is tough. She can carry it. You need to stay focused on your future. We've protected you this far, and we won't let this ruin everything. I stumbled back, my chest tight. My parents knew. They had known all along. This debt wasn't some family burden that fell on all of us. It was David's fault. His greed, his choices, his carelessness. And instead of holding him accountable, they had chosen to sacrifice me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I pushed the door open, and the three of them turned, shock flashing across their faces. So it was you, I said, my voice shaking with fury. You caused all of this, and you all lied to me. David stood quickly, defensive. Rachel, calm down. You don't understand. Don't tell me I don't understand. I shouted, my whole body trembling. I've been breaking myself apart for months. Working double shifts, losing friends, drowning in stress, all because of you. And you sit here with your fancy car and your expensive watch, acting like you're untouchable. My mother reached for me, her face pale. Rachel, please. You're overreacting. We only wanted to protect him. Protect him? I laughed bitterly, tears spilling down my cheeks. What about protecting me? I'm your daughter too. Or does that not matter as long as David gets to live comfortably? My father's voice was hard. Watch your tone, Rachel. We did what was necessary for the family. You're stronger than David. You can survive this. He can't. The words cut deeper than anything else. They weren't even ashamed. They weren't sorry. In their eyes, I was never a daughter. I was a shield, a servant, the one to clean up the mess. David stepped closer, his jaw tight. Look, maybe I made some mistakes, but that doesn't change the fact that the debt has to be paid. You're already handling it. Why make this dramatic? I snapped. Because it's my life, David. My life you're stealing piece by piece. You gambled away money you didn't have. And now you're hiding behind our parents like a coward. Do you even feel guilty? For a second, something flickered in his eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He shrugged. This is just how the world works. Some of us are meant to shine, and some of us are meant to support. His smirk returned. And you've always been good at supporting. The room went silent. I could hear the rain pounding outside, my own breath ragged in my chest. Something inside me broke wide open in that moment, but it wasn't weakness this time. It was strength, a raw, burning strength I didn't know I had. I squared my shoulders and looked at each of them. No more. I'm done being your safety net. I won't pay another cent for his mistakes. If the debt ruins the family name, let it. If David falls, let him. I refused to keep destroying myself for people who never once thought about me. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Rachel, don't do this. We'll fall apart without you. Then fall apart, I whispered, because I'm already in pieces and none of you care. David's face hardened, but for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. He wasn't used to me standing up to him. He wasn't used to anyone telling him no. My father tried to speak again, but I didn't let him. I turned and walked out, my legs trembling but steady enough to carry me away from that house. Away from their lies. Away from the chains they had tied around me since childhood. As the rain hit my skin outside, it felt like a cleansing. Painful, cold, but freeing. The truth had cut me, but it had also opened a door. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just their daughter, their backup plan, their solution. I was Rachel, and I was done. The days after that fight were heavy, but something inside me had changed. For the first time, I wasn't walking with my head down. I was angry, yes, but also clear. I knew what I had to do. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find. Bank statements, messages, loan papers. All of it pointed to David. At first, I wasn't sure how to get them, but David had always been careless. A few emails left open on the family computer, some letters in my parents' drawer, even posts he bragged about to his friends online. It all fit together. The debt wasn't just a mistake. It was reckless spending, risky deals, and loans he had no plan to repay. I spoke to a lawyer a friend recommended. Sitting in that office, I felt small at first, like maybe I didn't belong there. But as I laid out the papers and told my story, the lawyer leaned back and nodded. Rachel, you've been carrying a burden that was never yours. If you're ready, we can expose this. Legally, you are not responsible for this debt. He is. Those words were like sunlight breaking through clouds. For the first time in months, I could breathe. When the truth came out, it was like fire spreading. The creditors turned to David. My parents could no longer hide what he had done. At first, they tried to defend him, saying he was just misguided, that he had big dreams. But the facts were clear. The debt was his. The responsibility was his. David's world started to crack. Calls from angry partners, warnings from the bank, even whispers from his friends who no longer wanted to be associated with. The golden image he had built began to crumble. And I didn't feel sorry. Not this time. My parents were forced to face me. I remember my father's voice, quieter than I had ever heard it. "Rachel, we didn't realize how much we were asking of you." I met his eyes and shook my head. "No, you realized. You just didn't care. You thought I would never say no." My mother tried to reach for my hand, her eyes wet. "We only wanted to protect David. We thought he was fragile. And I wasn't?" I asked softly. "You thought I was so strong that you could pile everything on me, and I would never break. But I did break, and none of you saw it." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with years of favoritism, years of neglect. They had no answer, because deep down they knew it was true. I walked out of their house with my head high. For the first time, I wasn't carrying guilt or shame. I wasn't afraid of disappointing them. I realized I had already disappointed them long ago simply by not being David. Nothing I did would ever be enough, so why keep trying? I focused on myself again. I cut back the extra shifts and allowed myself to rest. I reconnected with friends I had pushed away. I started saving, not for anyone else, but for me. Slowly, the tired woman in the mirror began to fade, and the Rachel I remembered came back. David faced his own consequences. I heard he had to sell his car, move out of his fancy apartment, and start from scratch. My parents still tried to soften the blow for him, but it wasn't the same. The world finally saw him for who he was, and I didn't need to say a word. As for me, I found strength in the truth. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer their safety net. I had my own life, my own path, and no one had the right to take that from me again. The pain was still there, the betrayal, the lost years, the sacrifices I could never get back. But standing in my own small apartment, surrounded by things I had earned with my own two hands, I felt something stronger than pain. I felt free. I used to think family meant sacrifice, that love was measured by how much pain you could endure for the people closest to you. For years, I gave everything, my money, my time, my peace, believing it made me a good daughter, a good sister. But now I see the truth. What I gave was never appreciated, only expected. The betrayal still stings. Sometimes I catch myself replaying that night in the hallway, hearing their voices whispering about me like I was just a tool to fix David's mess. It hurts knowing my own parents chose to protect lies instead of protecting me. But the freedom I feel now is stronger than the hurt. I no longer bend myself to carry everyone else's weight. I no longer silence my own dreams just to keep others comfortable. I have stepped out of the shadows they pushed me into, and I can finally see myself clearly. David has his own battles to face now, battles that were always his. My parents live with the guilt of their choices, and I no longer rush in to make things easier. That's not my role anymore. For the first time, I live for me. My life, my rules, my peace. And when I look in the mirror, I see a woman who was betrayed, but who rose stronger, freer, and untouchable. Because sometimes losing your family's approval is the only way to find yourself. Do you want me to craft an extra punchy, quotable last line, like a closing hook for a viral video, or keep this softer, reflective ending? Hey besties, thanks so much for watching till the end. If you loved Rachel's story of betrayal and strength, don't forget to like, share, drop a comment, and of course, subscribe for more emotional dramas. See you in the next one. Her friends invited everyone except her to their girls' trip, so she booked one seat right beside them. You don't want to miss it. Bye.